Welcome to the Fantasy Champions Fantasy Football Podcast. Here's your host, Morgan Colby and Rick Lemon.
What's going on, Fantasy Champs?
What's up? What's up?
Welcome back to the pod. My name is Morgan Colby. I got Rick Lemon with me as always.
How we doing?
Microphone is always crooked, and I can never figure it out.
What's always crooked?
My microphone.
Oh,
The screw is loose, and I don't even know what kind of bolt that is. Not gonna let me doing at home. You know, this is what I do. I watch sports.
yep.
I play video games.
Yep.
I work.
Yeah. Hey, that sounds fun to me.
Those are the three things that I do. I don't do really anything around the house. I hire people for that. So I need.
You're not a real man.
Yeah, I don't know how to fix plumbing or electrical wires. I probably should know what the screw is though, because stupid microphone. Anyway, not the microphone. What's going on? How are we doing?
What's up? How we doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm floating.
Yeah. Tough day to be a Boston sports fan. Tough. Actually, honestly, tough. I was gonna say tough month.
We just suck.
Maybe
now, huh?
tough couple of years, to be honest. I'm telling you, bro, it was Brady. When Brady left it, that's when it ended.
Ruined us. Why do we still love him?
Because he gave us 6 rings.
Anyway, welcome to the pod once again. We are going to talk about must draft quarterbacks today. The NFL offseason is pretty much, the functional parts of the offseason are pretty much over in terms of roster construction. So the rosters are pretty much set at this point, with the exception of a few stragglers that may or may not get signed over the next couple months. We are inching ever so closely to the NFL season, 100 days. We're recording this on Tuesday, May 30th. So it is 100 days from the NFL season.
Man, the countdown is on. We only got to wait 100 days.
100 freaking days, which is, less than a third of a year, which is good, right? No?
Hey, well, this is why you got to go on your summer vacations. You got to spend time with family. This is the time to do stuff with everybody. So that way when the fall comes, you don't have to do any of that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And you can just watch football.
You just watch football. Yeah, because that's all I do in the fall anyway. But OTAs have started. Mini camps are going to be coming up. Not rookie mini camps. The mini camps for training camp, like a little fake training camp before
The mini camps for training camp.
Yeah, I think it's just called mini camp. But
This is why I don't keep up with some of this stuff. It's just like
OTAs,
the mini camp,
training camp.
Yeah,
all that stuff's coming up. OTAs have already started, so you're probably seeing the Baker Mayfield video float around. He looks awful.
He looks drunk.
He does not look good.
But do you think it's people? Do you think it's people just taking some stuff out of context too?
Yes, 1,000.
Like he has like one bad throw, and then they all post on Twitter.
That's the one that, yeah. Baker he throws like 12 dimes and no one posts it.
Right.
Bad throw, and it's like, there it is. Baker sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
That's exactly what's happening. But anyway, you're getting your training camp, not training camp, OTA hype videos, and people just posting random stuff and saying, moving up the draft boards. All right, guys, let's at least wait till preseason. My gosh.
Right.
What is it? It's going to be June. So that means we got June and then July and then preseason football, which would mean that we're only 2 months away. So that's, makes me feel slightly better.
Yeah, a little bit.
But anyway, so we're going to talk about must draft quarterbacks, some quarterbacks that you should definitely be drafting and getting on your fantasy teams this year. There's a couple of weirdo guys in here. As I look at the list, there's like, I feel like everyone's top 9 is exactly the same. Then after
top
that,
9 for the quarterbacks.
Top 9 for the quarterback position. And that's just kind of like a crap show. And there's not a single guy that I'm like, okay, I want to go grab that guy. So we'll break it down through the offseason. Maybe I'll fall in love with somebody, but Usually is a late round quarterback that I'm like, I need to snatch that guy right up. And I just don't see it this year. But anyway, before we do that, check out websitefantasychampions.com. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or any other podcasting platforms, please leave a review, share this podcast with your friends. You can also subscribe on YouTube. Click the bell for notifications, like, and comment down below. So yeah, like I was saying, I'm trying to find some ADP here. So I'm pulling up a mock draft. I don't know if this is accurate at all, but in the later rounds, I mean, I guess you got Deshaun Watson and Aaron Rodgers and Trey Lance at 128. Maybe that would be a good guy to snag. Anthony Richardson at 134. Holy crap.
Dude, he's 134, but he's flying upwards. He's like the QB9 in underdog, QB9 or 10. Which is and I loved Trevor Lawrence, but coming out, and I still love him now. Yeah. But his rookie year coming out, he was like QB9 or 10, and we were like, "What are we doing, guys? We love Trevor Lawrence, but like, what are we doing?" The same thing. That's going to be this year, Anthony Richardson. He's going to be like, because you said the top 9 is the same. Guess who's going to be number 10? It's going to be Anthony Richardson.
Oh, 1,000%. Not good.
And like, I get it with him because he's going to be a rushing quarterback, so he doesn't even have to be really good, especially if he just rushes. Start? Like, that's the thing. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to start week 1
because they could. Who's the backup?
Minshew, baby.
They could run Minshew and let him sit and think.
Yeah. It's going to at least be a real competition.
Yeah. So I mean, like, there's just sometimes people get all hyped up on a player, and it's you know how it is, but that would be a bad one. So
for you, because people are like, oh, but he's a perfect fantasy quarterback. Like, you got to just understand for redraft for year 1, like as a rookie quarterback, how good is he really going to be?
Right. Yeah, no, it's you have to be responsible with some of the draft picks that you're making and the position that you're taking guys. And like if Anthony Richardson stays at like 14 or 15, usually I cut my 14th or 15th guys anyway at some point in the first 3 weeks of the season. So like, that's the flyer area. And if you want to take a flyer on Anthony Richardson because he's going to start some games and he might rush, then that's fine. But like, even guys that you've seen come out like Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, like year 1 didn't look great for him. Even when they were on the field playing, it took some time for Justin Fields to get on the field. But like when he did, he wasn't that great for fantasy football to begin with. So they're not going to run Anthony Richardson out onto the field and have him run circles around everyone. It's going to take a year or two. So just, be smart. Be smart, people.
Right.
But anyway, so yeah, there's a bunch of guys in the later rounds that I guess you could take, but we're going to have a conversation about guys that you should be drafting. We have 4, possibly 5. 4 definites that we want on this list that I wholeheartedly agree with. But anyway, so let's start with the list. Number 1 being and you start
like the most obvious guys, number 1.
Most obvious and the best opportunity. This is for Justin Fields.
Yeah.
I can get too excited. I love Justin Fields.
Justin Fields.
more than my third child. But he was ridiculous last year. I mean, I was watching plays that he had. I still watch his highlights. It was almost and I've talked about this before, but it's like every single Sunday when I had him last year, I'd just be looking at the stats and going, oh God, this isn't going well. Give me 6 points right now. And then all of a sudden he would have like
80-yard rushing touchdown.
80-yard rushing touchdown where he breaks 6 tackles. And that's the whole fantasy day right there. It saves me a week. And he did that a bunch of times. Obviously Chicago adds DJ Moore to the team. They already have Darnell Mooney. They've
a full off season with Chase Claypool.
Third guy. Their offensive line has been a little bit retooled. They got some new, new situation with running backs, Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert. So we'll see how that works out. But I do think that Fields passing wise should improve. There were plays last year. If you look at some of the highlights, there's a lot of dropped passes for Justin Fields. And there were some ridiculous plays that he would make, and the receiver would it would go right through his hand.
Yeah. And the offensive line was brutal.
The offensive line was brutal. So hopefully some of the decisions that Chicago made this offseason help the football team and improve the offensive line and improved, the receiver core to a point where Justin Fields can actually pass the ball effectively. Because I think he's a better passer than Lamar Jackson. And I think he can be equivalent to Lamar Jackson's rushing that he puts up. And if that's the case, I mean, he's a superstar, in the making. But right now he is QB6 last year on the season, 307 total fantasy points, 20 fantasy points a game. He was 4th or 5th in fantasy points per game when he played the whole season. He did not play week 18, and he did not play week 12. So he had 307 in, what was that, 15 games?
Yep.
So
I think so, yeah.
Justin Fields was just absolutely absurd. I think the moves that they've made have improved the team, and I think the sky's the limit for Justin Fields. But where, Rick, are you comfortable drafting Justin?
That's a good question. I think he's probably going to be the first quarterback I end up taking in a lot, just because not that I don't want the top 3 guys, but those guys are going to go really, really early. I honestly could see, would you take Fields? I don't know. He's probably going to be like a 4th rounder, would be my guess. 4th or 5th rounder. Would you take him there? Yeah, I'd consider it. He's the first quarterback that I'd put it this way. He's the first quarterback I would consider taking off boards.
If I felt like I had a good first 3 or 4 rounds,
right,
then I'd do it.
And he falls a couple spots. Yeah, I'm with you 100%. That's how I feel. Because I mean, look, everything you said is true. What people I think don't understand with Fields, and there's a lot of people that don't like him, especially I noticed too, Patriots fans. A lot of them are very anti-Fields because he was the guy who had a Mac. Yep. And it's not just them, but there's a lot of people that are not huge Justin Fields fans. And I get it, but let's say he doesn't improve year 3, the offensive line still sucks, DJ Moore doesn't make a difference. All this stuff that they added and improved on in the offseason. Yep. You take all of that away, the dude was still the QB6 last year, or QB5, whatever it was. So you're still getting a return on investment, even if he doesn't improve at all. But they added DJ Moore, as you said. They added pieces to the offensive line. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name, but the tackle they took at number 10, Darnell Wright, I believe. And they added some interior guys as well. The running back situation, you could say got worse, but that doesn't really affect him, to be honest, because I don't think it really affects the offense. And you get, like I said, Chase Claypool with a full offseason. So you look at that, just the weapons. So Cole Kmet, Chase Claypool, Darnell Mooney, DJ Moore. That's up there with some of the best teams in the league, I think, in terms of weapons. He's got really, really good weapons this year with an improved offensive line. And it's year 3 for him, so you would expect a jump. The writing's on the wall. I think he could be the QB1 overall in fantasy. That's the type of player that he could be. So I think he's easily a must-draft guy because to me you can make the argument he's in the same tier as the Josh Allen, the Patrick Mahomes, and Jalen Hurts, but you get him 2 or 3 rounds later.
Yeah, I mean, I think too. There's a lot of there was a lot of questions about Justin Fields because Chicago obviously they ended up with the first overall pick, and there was a lot of conversations of do you go, do you take Bryce Young and move on from Fields and trade him away? And they basically said, no, we're going to double down. We're trading this pick away, and then we're going to go get DJ Moore. And so they doubled down on Justin Fields, which means they buy in and they believe in his talent and his ability. Passing wise, he hasn't been great in the NFL so far. If you're just watching him on an average Sunday, there are some throws that he makes, whoa, this guy's got it. And then, he'll just be inconsistent. And the question is, was that horrible offensive line play? Because when he was at Ohio State, he had nothing but clean pockets to throw from. He was sitting in the pocket for 6 seconds most of the time, waiting for something to get open. So not having that with Chicago really has kicked him in the lower extremities. But I think if they have improved that area and they've gotten him some talent, then sky's the limit for Justin Fields. I think if you give him time to throw, he's fine. So he certainly has not been Zach Wilson.
Right. No. He hasn't been that level. And he hasn't been great, but he at least improved from year 1 to year 2, right?
Yeah.
So you could see that. But yeah, to me, Fields for sure top guy on this list.
Yeah. All right. Must draft. Get him on your teams. If he's on the board, draft. All right. Number 2, we have T Law.
Mhm.
Love Trevor Lawrence. Big thing about Trevor, and I'll quickly state this because I do love Trevor Lawrence. This last year he was QB 8.
Yep.
3 fantasy points. He played all of his games, so he's 18 points per game. Basically equivalent to what Kirk Cousins put up last year, who was the QB 7. So Lawrence had a really good season last year. Big thing with a guy like Trevor Lawrence is obviously, he could add 200, 300, 400 yards rushing, maybe, to his total because he is an athletic quarterback. Last year he had 291 rushing. I saw around 300, and he had 5 rushing touchdowns on the season, which is that's regression screaming at the top of his lungs. But
yeah,
he is, he had big improvements from year 1 to year 2. Completion percentage jumped from 59% to 66%. Yards per attempt, 6 in 2021 to 7 in 2022. Obviously an increase in passing touchdowns. So a lot of really good things for Trevor Lawrence, but big dilemma with Trevor Lawrence is that, 300 is actually a good number to be at. It's more than I think Justin Herbert rushes. So that's
and he has I don't think they want him to run because in college I want to say he ran for 400 yards 1 year, so he's capable of it,
right?
But he's much more in the NFL game. He's very pocket oriented passer.
I would project him if I'm sitting here right now with the talent that they've added to Jacksonville that we've talked about in the past, and everyone probably has talked about Calvin Ridley coming in. I would probably project him around 250 rush yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. And so with that, your base floor for rushing would be 25.
Well, so
I'll say 30 to 35 fantasy points added to his total, which, that
Sure.
number could move him from QB 7 all the way up to QB 6 or 5. Big thing for Trevor Lawrence is that he is the modern day NFL pocket passer. Generally speaking, and when I say modern day, I mean Patrick Mahomes at this point is a pocket quarterback. So
right.
So that's Trevor Lawrence. So he's going to have to pack up 35 touchdowns in order to be a legit threat in fantasy football. Obviously last year he was 12th in points per game and finished what did I say 7th? 8th.
Yeah, he was 8th, I think.
Maybe 8. So he had some really good games, but to me, he was on the back end of the top 10 of quarterbacks. That's not
he was
what I'm looking for at the quarterback position. But if he does ascend into that up, if he takes another step forward and throws 35 touchdowns and then does the same thing he did with the rushing,
well, then
all bets are off. He's a top 5 quarterback. But I think his ceiling fantasy football wise is similar to Joe Burrow.
It's not as high as Fields.
Yeah, not as high as Fields. So
what I will say to that is I think Trevor Lawrence, of the modern white guys, pocket passers, because let's be honest, most of them are white. If you say Burrow, Herbert, Trevor Lawrence, Mac Jones, whoever else you want to put on that list.
Cam Newton.
Definitely not Cam Newton. Trevor Lawrence is probably the most mobile, I want to say, of those guys. Probably. So he has so I was looking up his college stats. His second year, his sophomore year, he had almost 600 rushing yards and 9 rushing touchdowns in college. So
wow.
He can rush. He's not a rushing quarterback, but he is mobile. I think he's actually very similar to Mahomes in that sense.
Could stay.
Yeah, so maybe it could. I don't know. So to me, I think maybe he is able to keep that rushing number. And then obviously the passing number, I think he continues to grow and continue to improve because his year 1 to year 2 jump was massive. I'm not going to say it's that big of a leap from year 2 to year 3, but I do think he keeps getting better because of the Calvin Ridley effect. You're getting all of a sudden a wide receiver 1 that he didn't have last year. And the Jaguars on paper have one of the best offenses in the league, I think, with Doug Peterson being the coach. If you factor that in, the Calvin Ridley, Christian Kirk was better than I think a lot, including myself. I was not a fan of Christian Kirk, but he had a really good year. So you have Christian Kirk there. Zay Jones had a good year too. Evan Ingram's also had a good year, good tight end. You got a good running back with Travis Etienne. So they had a lot of pieces there. Is he going to throw 35 touchdowns and 5,000 yards? Probably not. But you're not drafting him to be that either, because if he did that with his rushing, you're right, he's a top 5 quarterback, maybe even higher. But he's the QB8 right now in a lot of drafts, and he's the last guy of that top 8 in a lot of drafts. So it's not like you're drafting him to be that. If you look at it, instead of comparing him to some of those guys ahead of him and you compare it to some of the guys behind him, then it makes a lot of difference. Because if it's like Dak Prescott, if you're sitting there in the 6th, 7th round and you're like, okay, Dak Prescott or Trevor Lawrence, I'm taking Trevor Lawrence 10 times out of 10.
Yeah. No, I think you're right on with that, spot on, because, there is a chance that he does ascend. Like, he's not throwing 5,000 yards. Like, let's
probably not. Well, hey, who knows?
Maybe it does happen, but I to me, I think if you're being realistic, he's not throwing that. But my concern is that, like, you remember when Tannehill was good a couple of years ago for Tennessee?
Yep.
That rushing floor, and he was good every week. Like, he always got you 20 points.
Yeah.
That to me is what Trevor Lawrence can be in terms of fantasy football. If you're looking at it at just,
I think that's a
median like performance level this year. Right. And then you have, if Jacksonville plays better than they did last year, and then you have Jacksonville if they play worse. So I would imagine, I haven't seen the strength schedules. Let me pull that up real fast. But I would imagine that he plays better just because they put some more talent around him.
Yeah.
His strength of schedule is not going to affect them. It's like mediocre. So
I was going to say they do play Houston twice, who I know got better, but still they play Tennessee twice, who got probably worse. They play the Colts twice, who are mid.
On Player Profiler, his ADP is 71. If you look at it on Sleeper, he is pick 65 right now. So like, that's one of those guys that, like Rick was saying, the back end of, the quarterback spectrum, where you're talking about the 8th or 9th guy off the board that not a lot of people are going to take. It's cheaper. It's cheap, much cheaper than Justin Fields is probably going to end up being. It's much cheaper than even Joe Burrow, who a lot of people love. It's cheaper than Justin Herbert. So it's like, that's a guy that I would draft. Like, if I'm later in drafts and I'm going for the late QB strategy, Trevor Lawrence would be a guy that I would get on my team, because most likely he's going to provide a consistent performance, and he'll give you consistent rushing on the ground, even if it's just 1 or 2 fantasy points in a week. He also has that ability to score touchdowns on the ground. So, there's a lot of different avenues for him to score fantasy points, and he can give you those 20-point weeks, which is what I'm looking for at quarterback. Not every team in the league can get a quarterback who scores 40 points and saves your season.
Yeah.
Or saves your week because he scored 40 to 45 fantasy points at the quarterback position. Josh Allen can do that. Jalen Hurts can do that. I think Fields can do that. Patrick Mahomes can obviously do that. Joe Burrow sometimes can do that. We don't know if Justin Herbert, like, Herbert's had those games before, not at a consistent enough level that he would be able to do that. But Jackson has done it. Lamar Jackson, Herbert, Lawrence, you see some of these guys, like Lawrence is one of those guys that hasn't really done that yet, where he can save you a couple of weeks during the year, and he's the single reason why you won. But maybe with the new talent and the offensive improvements, he can take that step forward. So,
right. Yeah, no, I agree.
Must draft. All right. Number 3, Justin Herbstreit. Justin Herbert. He was last year. He was
bad year.
Bad year, not good year. He missed a lot of games, didn't he? No.
I don't think so. I think he was just a down year.
Yeah, he had a QB 11 on the season, so he had a down year. So if you're buying Justin Herbert this year, you're buying a much lower version. Now, Keenan Allen got hurt, correct?
Yeah, Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. There was a stretch where DeAndre Carter and Josh Palmer were his wide receiver 1 and 2 for like 5 or 6 weeks.
So 2020 and 2020.
He still threw 4,700 yards.
Yeah, I know it's ridiculous, but 2020 and 2021. And this is why, like, you look at guys like Justin Herbert, like last year, he had 147 rushing yards. That was part of the reason why, because in previous years, the year before, he had 3 rushing touchdowns. He had 5 rushing touchdowns in his rookie season. So he had 8 in his first 2 seasons in rushing touchdowns. Last year, 0. He had, combined together 500 plus rushing yards in the first 2 seasons of his career.
Yeah.
He had 300 in 2021, 234 in 2020, and then he had 147 last year. So, the previous years you were getting swaths of fantasy points from the rushing, similar to Trevor Lawrence's rushing production the first 2 years of his career. And then this year, he didn't put up anything. The other area that he regressed in was passing touchdowns. So he had 31 in year 1, 38 in year 2, and he had 25 last year. So yardage wise, he's putting it up. He's putting up big yards. But the touchdowns were a massive regression for Justin Herbert. And so if you have a quarterback like Justin Herbert, who I would consider as a pocket passer as well, who's going to stand in the pocket and throw the ball, and that's what they're going to ask him to do. They're not going to ask him to rush the ball. He has to throw 32 to 35 plus touchdowns if he wants it. Now, Justin Herbert's done it before. He's a really great quarterback. He throws 4,700 yards almost every year. So I will take the bet.
A career bad year for him was 47,000 yards.
Yes. So I'll take the bet that they go in the positive. Chargers also got Kellen Moore.
Yeah, which was an upgrade for sure.
Upgrade on the offensive side of the ball. They still have a bonehead head coach, but it's all right.
They drafted Quentin Johnston too.
But now, so my question for you, Rick, is, Justin Herbert's pick, according to the player profiler EDP on his profile, he's at pick 62. Trevor Lawrence was 71. Would you rather take Trevor Lawrence at his value?
Yeah.
71, or take Justin Herbert at 62 and hope he gets the touchdowns back?
I'm not sure. To be honest with you, again, and I'm one of these guys that I'm higher on Herbert than most people. I would rather Herbert than Trevor Lawrence. I would. Now, if you factor in ADP, you might be able to convince me, because I like both guys. So you could probably convince me to take Trevor Lawrence over him based on the ADP. But if they're pretty similar, which they are in a lot of drafts, they're like back to back, I'm taking Justin Herbert. And the reason being is, we talk about regression all the time. When you rattle off those rushing stats, could you even make the argument that positive regression is a thing? Like, if he's still getting like 60 rushing attempts, I don't think he's getting 0 rushing touchdowns again. In the Chargers offense, the 25 passing touchdowns, Eckler had 15 rushing touchdowns, which was by far a career high.
Saying positive regression for Eckler, but it never happens. So,
well, he gets positive in terms of rushing, though.
Negative regression for his rushing touchdowns.
He's had seasons, monster years. Yeah. But it's like usually he gets receiving touchdowns and rushing touchdowns. He was like strictly rushing touchdowns. Every time they got on the goal line, they would rush the ball every single time. I feel like that's going to change. I would expect that to change.
I mean,
Not only that, the team did make offensive improvements. By the way, Rashawn Slater, their best offensive lineman, he tore his ACL week 1 last year. So he missed the entire season. He's coming back. You get Kellen Moore, who is Joe Lombardi is like one of the worst offense coordinators in the league. Like him and Patricia were battling out for worst offense coordinators. So you get an upgrade there. Even if you don't like Kellen Moore, he's still an upgrade over Lombardi. Quentin Johnston probably won't do a ton year 1, but he's still a first-round wide receiver that you're adding to that team to go with Keenan Allen, who I don't think is the same player, but is still, a wide receiver 2 or 3 at the worst. And Mike Williams, who's a very good receiver. So their trio at wide receiver is still very good. Eckler is still there. They ended up keeping him. So he still has a really good team, still has a really good offense coordinator. And last year still had a great year. Just the touchdowns were low. And for his rushing and passing. So all you expect is a touchdown increase, and he's going to be insane. People forget that in 2021, not last year, but the year before that, in his second year in the league, he was almost the MVP of the league, and he was second in fantasy among quarterbacks, and he was right behind Patrick Mahomes. Or was it Josh Allen? I don't remember who was the QB1. It was Josh Allen, but he was right behind him. Yeah, he was less than 20 fantasy points behind him. So we've seen him be the QB2.
Yeah.
And you're drafting him as the QB7 because of a bad year.
Right.
I'll take that all day. I don't think Trevor Lawrence can be the QB2 unless he literally wins MVP, but Herbert can't.
Yeah. No,
not that Trevor Lawrence can't, because but I just think like,
to me, it depends, because if Trevor Lawrence is going to continue doing the 300 yards rushing, 2-3 touchdowns.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
And he puts up similar passing numbers, like let's just say 4,500 yards and like 32 touchdowns this year.
Sure.
Like he could ascend into.
No, that is fair. But I'll ask you this: who has the better odds of throwing 5,000 yards and 35 touchdowns?
Justin Herbert.
Right.
No.
So to me, like if you're a pocket passer and you're going to put up those numbers.
What if Kellen Moore brings the Dallas offense over here to Los Angeles, right? And they just
win. That's possible, but
because
he had Zeke and Pollard. This team has Eckler, who's a good running back, and he's good on the ground, but he's a pass like his specialty is receiving.
Fair enough.
Out of the backfield, but I don't know.
I think as good as Herbert was in his first 2 years,
his rookie numbers are ridiculous.
I know you love Justin Herbert.
I do. I will admit that.
Trevor Lawrence was drafted as a generational talent, like a Peyton Manning.
Yes, he was. Yep.
So, like,
it's not need. No, I'm trying not to like knock Trevor Lawrence and what I will also say too,
because I think Trevor Lawrence with his rushing, like he can put up exactly the same number. Like I think these two guys are the same quarterback, just 10 spots different. To be honest,
and that's fair. I think at this point in their careers, I trust Herbert a little bit more passing.
Yeah.
Not to say that Trevor Lawrence isn't, because you're right, he is a generational talent, and I think he's going to be an MVP in this league.
I mean, Rick, they both played each other in the playoffs, and one beat the other.
Yeah, that is true. But fantasy numbers, I guess Trevor did have more fantasy, even though he threw 4 interceptions. But either way, what I will also say, because now we're done with those top guys, what I'm going to tell people, it is still early, but what I've noticed so far, and I in the past we haven't been like this, but I would say I want one of the top 8 quarterbacks. I think there is a drop off after number 8. I think all of the top 8 guys I feel good about. Like we didn't even mention obviously the top 3 guys, but like Lamar Jackson, to me, his biggest thing is injuries. But if he stays healthy, he's a guy who could be QB1.
Let's play
Justin
a game with
Fields.
the top 8.
Okay.
I just want to see if there's any quarterback that you feel like you wouldn't put in the must draft category. Patrick Mahomes.
I would actually say him just because he's so early.
Forget about
forget about ADP.
Forget about ADP for now.
Okay, yeah, then Mahomes for sure. I want him on my team.
Josh Allen, you want him on your team?
For sure.
Jalen Hurts, want him on your team?
For sure. For sure. Although ADP hurts him, but yeah, for sure.
Lamar Jackson?
For sure.
He's been a little bit more consistent, so I think he's a little bit more questionable, but I like the rushing quarterbacks. Like last year, he fell to me.
He did.
I think there's a very good chance that could happen again. So we'll see what happens with Lamar, but yeah.
Lamar's thing is injuries, but dude, he was a little inconsistent last year, but they just got, I know Odell's a shell of himself, but you still get Odell, which is, even Odell being a shell is better than like Devin Duvernay, right? So like you still get him, and then you get Zay Flowers too. Like they upgraded a lot in the receiving room
and then
for him this year.
We said 6, 7, 8 here. Justin Fields, Herbert, Lawrence as must drafts.
Right.
So like all of these guys, I would say of all years, like Rick was saying, this would be a year maybe to invest, because there is quarterbacks like Trevor Lawrence and Justin Herbert and some of those guys, like you're going to be able to get them probably in the 6th or 7th round.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, if you want to wait on a quarterback, that's the longest I'd wait. I don't want to get caught with my pants down and be one of the 4 teams in the league that's either streaming quarterbacks or
you don't want Geno Smith?
No, I do not want Geno freaking Smith. But I don't want to be caught with my pants down with a quarterback who's not great. You know what I mean? And have to figure out how to stream or get stuck with a guy that I think might be a breakout or whatever. You know, because there's going to be guys that fill in the gaps. Obviously, there's not just going to be these top 8 guys, but I would rather have a shot at having one of these guys that all has a chance to be a top 3, 4, 5 guy than go after a quarterback in the mid to late rounds and hope something happens just based on this year. Because usually there's a guy later that you can invest in that's young. And that is not something that I'm seeing outside of the rookie quarterbacks. Like, the young guys are Trey Lance, who we don't know is going to play. Jordan Love, who we have his schedule is freaking super easy right now, but we don't know if he's going to be any good. You got Kenny, who's a pocket passing quarterback, and you need a heck of a lot of things to go right in order for him to get into the top.
Sam Howell.
Yeah, and then you Sammy Howell, Mac Jones, Ryan Tannehill. So I'm looking at this like, and there's just no one that's super impressive to me. And if you want a quarterback, you probably should draft him in that top section. But we do have 2 more guys that could be, they're guys that you should draft. They're not as strong must drafts. They're guys that you probably should draft that are a little bit later in drafts.
Yeah.
That you can invest in. The first guy is Deshaun Watson, who currently his ADP is sitting around 88. So, and then on Sleeper, I think it's even lower. So he is a guy that you could snag.
It's in the hundreds on Sleeper, early hundreds.
So he's a guy that you could snag 9th, 10th round and be totally good with. When he was playing, the last couple of years of his career is ridiculous. 400 yards rushing. He had 33 passing touchdowns last year. He played 4,800 yards. Like, he was doing stuff like that, and then obviously missed the whole year of football, and then came back this year off of suspension and played 6 games. In those 6 games, he had a 58% completion percentage, 6.5 yards per attempt.
Yucky.
Awful. He was terrible. So Rick threw this guy on the list, and I'm not fully in on Deshaun Watson. Like, I think now that he's going to have a full off season with the team and a full training camp, a full preseason, and he's going to start the season as the number 1 quarterback, I do think that there's a chance that Deshaun Watson ascends to that level of play that he was at when he was playing for this team, for Houston in 2020. And like, with the rushing upside that he provides, there's obvious fantasy upside for him. But I'm still having trouble connecting the dots here because I don't know that he has it anymore as a quarterback. He's one of Rick's favorite guys, but he's got to get back to that, those 3 seasons when he was playing for Bill O'Brien, where he had 68 completion percentage, 67% completion percentage, 70% completion percentage, and throwing over 4,000 yards, because he was the guy. Like, he was that rushing quarterback that could throw 4,000 yards.
Yeah, exactly.
If he gets back to that, all bets are off and you're in a great position. If he doesn't and he sucks, then you invested poorly in your investment. So I think it's a little bit more risky of a draft selection, but I want to hear, Rick, why you think he's a must draft.
Well, it's for sure risky. And he's a guy that did really struggle last year when he came back in. But what I'll say about Watson is he's a guy that didn't play football for a year, and it wasn't injury related. So it wasn't like he was recovering from an injury. A lot of times, like, sometimes you just need reps. And again, he is risky because if he stays like this, then it's going to be a bad pick. But you're looking at the top 8 guys. If you miss out on those guys and you're looking at like the quote unquote tier 3, for me, I'm looking at the guys of everyone in this like tier 3, like what they have on Fantasy Pros. Who's the guy that could be a top 5 quarterback? And to me, there's only one that I see on that list, and that's Deshaun Watson. And people forget, like, he was in Houston. He was in 2020, he was QB5. In 2019, he was QB5. And in 2018, he was QB4. And then 2017 was his rookie year. So since his rookie year, before everything went down with him, but in that stretch, that 3-year stretch in Houston, he was a top 5 quarterback every year in fantasy. So to me, he still has that ability. We saw like he still rushes in only 6 games. He had 100 rushing yards. I think that was a good sign. 100. I think he had, was it 100 rushing yards? Yeah, 175 in 6 games. You prorate that to a full season. I think that's like 500-ish rushing yards. So he still has the ability to rush. It's just going to be a matter of if he can figure it out, right? If he's able to get back to what he was as a passer, which is a question mark. I will give you that. But the upside with him is there. And it's for sure there, especially if you're comparing it to the guys in his range. You know, maybe Dak Prescott and Tua, you could make arguments, but like, I don't know with Tua and Dak too.
If
Danny
hits,
Dimes.
If it hits, it hits. Like you're
right. And to me, that's what I'm looking for in like the 9th, 10th rank.
Yeah, that's fair enough. What do you think the chances are he does hit?
I think to me, I honestly think it's 50-50. So I think there's just as good of a chance he sucks, just as good of a chance that he's back to what he was.
Most likely outcome for you.
If you put a gun to my head, I would say he's not the same player that he once was. But that doesn't mean I don't think like I said, it's pretty much 50-50.
Okay. I was going to. You have anything else to say about Deshaun Watson?
No, I just think like the upside. It's rare to get like a veteran upside guy, and after you get like past the top quarterbacks. But for me, that's exactly what he is.
I was trying to pull up, see if he could do over under totals for. You can. Let me find him. Okay, Deshaun Watson over under 3,600 passing yards.
3,600. Yep. I would say over.
Okay, passing touchdowns. They do not have that one loaded in. Freaking A, DraftKings. All right, so it's just passing yards. So 3,600 passing yards.
I'll tell you why, because in 2018, 2019, 2020, he had 41, 38, and he missed the game that year. And then he had 48,000 yards passing in 2020.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't like. He looked so bad last year, and I don't.
He did, but he didn't play football in a year and a half. So you get him reps,
but like you said, the ADP is. That's a strong contributing factor to making
right. And he's a guy that could suck too. Like, I'm not saying you draft him expecting him to be what he used to be. You could get easily burned, but it's not like he's a 5th or 6th round pick. Like, you're getting him later.
Okay.
And it's someone who I think, like, I'm still taking the top 8 guys for sure. But if you miss out on those guys and you're like, oh crap, what do I do? I think he would be my next choice.
Okay. There are 4 must-draft quarterbacks for you guys. We're trying to come up with a 5th guy here, and we don't want to just throw guys on the list to throw guys on the list. You know, in terms of like, obviously, we just talked about how the top 8 quarterbacks are all guys that we would love to draft. Lamar Jackson might be a little bit cheaper this year, so I would say he's a must-draft, and he would probably be my 5th guy on that list. Especially if he does end up falling again.
Right.
But after that, like after Deshaun Watson, like I don't like Dak. After Deshaun Watson, you got 2. You got Daniel Jones. You got Aaron Rodgers. Jared Goff. Russell Wilson. You like Russell Wilson a little bit more.
What I'll quickly say about Russ is with Sean Payton being there, it's similar to like he was so bad last year. Like really bad, so it's hard to justify it. But with Sean Payton coming in, if he could go back to his old self, that would be a home run pick. But
yeah, so you know, I think for me, like you know, where Russell Wilson is getting drafted, like you know, I don't necessarily like. I mean, a must draft is a must draft. So if you're in the later rounds, like you can be an absolute must draft selection. Russ is right now 173, so he's according to the player profiler ADP on he is right around 118, and I think that'll probably fall. So you know, I don't think people buy into Russell Wilson. He might even be like a waiver wire guy by the time the season starts, and that could be a situation. But yeah, I'm not, with the last pick in the draft, if you're looking for a quarterback that maybe does something, his best comp on Player Profiler is kind of funny, Drew Brees. Nice, guys. I like to see, you like to see that stuff when, the guy who used to coach him.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, but to me, I think they were so bad, and I think there was more problems than just the head coach there for Denver. So, I mean, obviously the head coach is going to clean up a lot of stuff, but I don't know if it's enough to make the offense good again. So we'll find out about Russ, but he's not risky because it doesn't cost anything, but I just don't believe in his ability to take that step forward. But after the top 8, top 9, it's just like bad quarterback.
Right. Yeah. Which it hasn't always been that way in the past. So I'm looking to draft someone in that top 8. If not, I mean, maybe I'd take Rodgers maybe at 15, but I don't know about that. Tua, maybe, because he's got Hill and Waddle, but he's got to stay healthy and his ceiling isn't that high. I don't want Danny Dimes. I don't want Kirk Cousins. Yeah. I don't really want Dak. So it's one guy I'll quickly mention, Trey Lance. If he starts, he is going to be someone I will draft as a flyer.
Yeah.
If they announce him to be the starter in August or something, just because he's rushing quarterback, right? And he's got a ridiculous team around him. He's got McCaffrey, George Kittle, Debo, Brandon Ayuk. He's got a Pro Bowl cast around him.
Yeah.
And he's a rushing quarterback. So even if he sucks, I will easily take that flyer. But who knows if he even starts? So
fair enough. All right. There you go. Must draft quarterbacks. Get them on your team. Should be an interesting time. Hopefully you enjoyed the show. We got another one coming later this week. We're going to do another mock draft 2.0, and then a lot more redraft content coming your way. We'll talk to you later, guys.
Peace out.
Thank you for listening to the Fantasy Champions Podcast. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes and YouTube, and follow us on Twitter @TheFFChamps.